Okay, welcome everybody. Um, I have a Dharma talk today. My Dharma subject is mindfulness, meditation, as it relates to the Satipatthana Sutra or Sutta. So I'm going to read a little bit first and ask you to put your hands in Hapchung. Um, Satipatthana Sutta is kind of where we get the foundations of mindfulness. And so as I read, Bhikkhus, this is the direct path for the purification of beings, for the surmounting of sorrow and lamentation, for the disappearance of pain and grief, for the attainment of the true way, for the realization of Nibbana, namely, the four foundations of mindfulness. What are the four? Here, bhikkhus. A bhikkhu abides contemplating the body as a body, ardent, fully aware, mindfully putting away covetousness and grief for the world. He abides contemplating feelings as feelings, ardent, fully aware, and mindful, having put away covetousness and grief for the world. He abides contemplating the mind as the mind, ardent, fully aware, and mindful, having put away covetousness and the grief for the world. He abides contemplating mind objects as mind objects, ardent, fully aware, and mindful, having put away covetousness and grief for the world. And how bhikkhus does a bhikkhu abide contemplating the body as a body? Here, a bhikkhu gone to the forest or to the root of a tree or to an empty hut sits down, having folded his legs crosswise, set his body erect, and established mindfulness in front of him. Ever mindful, he breathes in. Mindful, he breathes out. Breathing in long, he understands, I breathe in long. Or breathing out long, he understands, I breathe out long. Breathing in short, he understands, I breathe in short. And breathing out short, he understands, I breathe out short. He trains thus. I shall breathe in experiencing the whole body, and he trains thus. I shall breathe out experiencing the whole body. He trains thus. I shall breathe in tranquilizing the body formation. He trains thus. I shall breathe out tranquilizing the body formation. And a little bit further on it says, in this way he abides contemplating the body as a body internally, or he abides contemplating the body as externally, or he abides contemplating the body as both internally and externally. Or else he abides contemplating in the body its nature of arising, or he abides contemplating in the body its nature of vanishing, or he abides contemplating in the body its nature of both arising and vanishing. Or else mindfulness that there is a body is simply established in him to the extent necessary for bare knowledge and mindfulness. And he abides independent, not clinging to anything in the world. That is how a bhikkhu abides contemplating the body as a body. Again, bhikkhus, when walking, a bhikkhu understands, I am walking. When standing, he understands, I am standing. When sitting, understands, I am sitting. And when lying down, understands that I am lying down. And he understands accordingly, however his body is disposed. In this way, he abides contemplating the body as a body, internally, externally, and both internally and externally. And then finally, again, bhikkhus, a bhikkhu is one who acts in full awareness when going forward and returning, who acts in full awareness when looking ahead and looking away, who acts in full awareness when flexing and extending his limbs, who acts in full awareness when wearing his robes and carrying his outer robe and bowl, who acts in full awareness when eating, drinking, consuming food and tasting, who acts in full awareness when defecating and urinating, who acts in full awareness when walking, standing, sitting, falling asleep, waking up, talking, and keeping silent. In this way, he abides contemplating the body as a body, internally, externally, and both internally and externally. And he abides independent, not clinging to anything in the world. That too is how a bhikkhu abides contemplating the body as a body. Thus ends the reading. When I read this, and I try to read it every couple of months, it's one of those things that's kind of important in my view. But it tells us, the Buddha is telling us that when are you mindful? You're mindful all the time. I'm not mindful all the time. I try as much as I can to be mindful, but it takes a lot of practice. And that's why we do this meditation and this mindfulness. It's practice, much like just going to the gym and practicing. Well, we go and sit and practice with our mind. About 50 years ago, I was, well, 55, I guess. Yeah, 53 to 55 years ago, somewhere in there. I was skiing up at Boyne Mountain, and I wasn't much of a skier. I was either a senior in high school or a freshman in college. I can't remember. And it was one of those days, it was a cold winter day, but you didn't really notice the cold because you were skiing. But I was at the top of one of the big hills, the mountains at Boyne, and looking out across this panoramic view into like a valley. It was a beautiful snow falling. It was just heavy snow coming down. The visibility may have been a mile, may have been a little bit less, but you could see the highway and the houses and the other hills and all the people. And it was such a beautiful and calming, peaceful moment that I remember it very clearly, because I think it's one of the first times that I ever had that realization about how peaceful this was. Now, since then, and before I got into Buddhism, from that time until I got into Buddhism, there may have been a couple of other periods of time when I felt that same thing. Another time up at Boyne Mountain when I was much the same situation, and it was kind of a repeat. And then some other times in the sun or at the beach or something. You just felt fully aware, fully present, fully there. And that's mindfulness. Now, that's not meditation. There's a difference between mindfulness and meditation. And we'll get to that in a little bit. Now, this mindfulness movement that the country is going through, or that our society is going through, it is very useful. I think it's very good. I think it might wake some people up. And, you know, obviously there's a lot of people giving advice that might be more self-serving than actually doing any good for anybody else. But you've got to know that. You've got to differentiate that. But the Buddha used mindfulness several times in his teachings, of course. Now, first of all, mindfulness was part of the Noble Eightfold Path. And that Noble Eightfold Path, as we understand, is how we reach freedom, how we reach liberation. The mindfulness is also the first of the 7 factors of awakening, along with joy, tranquility, patience, investigating, and some other things. So mindfulness is very prominent in everything that we do, and the Buddha says be mindful all of the time. Now, John Kabat-Zinn gives us a definition, and his definition is mindfulness is paying attention on purpose, in a particular way, non-judgmentally, in the here and now, in the present moment. Now, mindfulness is not about forcing your mind not to wander. Your mind's going to wander. We're humans, the mind wanders all the time. It's more about being aware when the mind is wandering, and as best you can, and as gently as possible, you redirect your attention back to the moment. You reconnect with the moment. Your life is unfolding constantly. We're more of a process than a thing, actually, and your mind is always unfolding, and our objective, we try to be mindful of that unfolding at all times. Now, meditation and mindfulness are not the same, similar. Meditation is always mindfulness, but mindfulness is not always meditation. You can be mindful without meditating. And if you're going to use meditation, and meditation has kind of three components about it that you try. The first thing is that you have the intention of meditating. Mindfulness, you may not have the intention. It just pops up, or you're just aware of it. It could have an intention with it too. But in meditation, you have the intention of meditating. Here, now, for how long, when, and so on. Meditation also has directed attention, this bare understanding, this bare awareness to it. Mindfulness also has a bare awareness to it. And then you have attitude. Meditation has an attitude, and this is similar in terms of mindfulness, but a little different. In terms of mindfulness, or in terms of meditation, we're always trying to think in a loving, compassionate sort of way, a loving kindness, compassionate, the 4 immeasurables. The more mindful you become, the less you are impacted by these habitual reactions that drive us all the time. I can't remember where or what. Bear with me on this one. It's a little bit off the track. But I read somewhere that as a human, we have something like 28,000 thoughts every day. That seems a little low. I think more than that, I think. But if we have these 28,000 thoughts every day, most of the time, these 28,000 thoughts, they're the same. They're just repeating all the time. And awareness, this mindfully being aware of the moment, can help break that thought pattern that just kind of runs on its own course. The Buddha also talks, he has the simile of the elephant, a raging elephant, a mad elephant. A trained elephant is a very valuable work tool. They help a lot. But a raging elephant can kill, destroy. And the way you train the elephant is you just tie one leg to a post so that it can't get away. And after a while, it will just give up, and then you can just have a piece of string holding the elephant in place. I mean, it could break out of it very easily, but it won't. Kind of like fleas jumping. If you put a top on a jar, fleas will jump up and hit the top. And then after you take the jar away, they won't go beyond that little level. It probably didn't need to know about fleas, but it just popped into my head, so it's popping into yours. But the mind is like that elephant. When it's not controlled, when it's not tied down, it just runs all over. It goes and goes. And you can train the mind. Much like you go to the gym to train your body, you can sit in meditation and train your mind. And quieting the mind is always the first step. You're trying to reach this quiescence. And whether you're into the Zen tradition, as this is a Zen temple, or you're into the Vipassana meditation, quieting the mind, or the shamatha, is always the first part of meditation, and that comes with the mindfulness. Now, with mindfulness, you can develop the skill of bare attention. Now, the Buddha talks about that, about bare attention, bare awareness. And bare attention is noticing, all the time, noticing. It reestablishes itself simply by noticing that it hasn't been present. So by that, I mean, if your mind's wandering off, oh, I'm not aware of the moment right now, that you were off, now you're back. That's the essence of the meditation, is coming back right here, right now, with this bare attention. As soon as you notice that you have not been noticing, then by definition, you are noticing, and you're back again paying bare attention. And mindfulness creates its own distinct feeling of consciousness. Instead of identifying with what arises, we watch with curiosity in a non-judgmental manner of whatever is unfolding. It means to put down our impulsive doing mindset. We have this mindset of, I got to do this, I got to do that, I should, I shouldn't, I must, I mustn't. That's that impulsive, habitual reaction. And you can take time out from that through meditation and mindfulness. You can rest in an observational state of awareness, simply standing back and seeing without reacting. Now, I'm a reactor. We all react. We all have judgmental. But the less you do of that, of course, the more mindful you become. Now, once you realize that there's a judgment there, or you're experiencing a judgment, you are no longer just focusing on bare attention, because your perception has come in and it's changed. You're not in bare perception or bare awareness right now. You're in a judgmental state. So obviously we try to downgrade the judgmentalness. Now we can see or observe our thoughts without being caught up in them if we step back. We don't have to get carried away by them. Kind of the old argument, the same things come up over and over again. And when you break that with mindfulness, you are stepping back and out of that mindset. Mindfulness takes us off of the automatic pilot, and it presents the opportunity to see more clear, or the undistorted reality. Mindfulness is not aimed at anything that is external to us. It is only aimed at what is internal, what is in the mind. Now, mindfulness fosters a quiescence. It fosters a non-judgment and an equanimity. Now, the difference between judgment and non-judgment and equanimity, equanimity is more of a impartiality that comes with our mindfulness. And also, mindfulness fosters the four divine abodes, or the four immeasurables, and that's loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. There's also, when you're meditating or when you're mindful, there's what we call the power of the pause. Now, when meditating on the breath, there is a pause between the in-breath and the out-breath, and between the out-breath and the in-breath. This pause is very important if you're meditating. You want to notice the pause. You don't grab onto it. You just notice it. Pause. Pause. Over and over, that pause gives you a return to right here, right now. Whoop. I hope I didn't lose the last page. Now, when you're feeling anxious or stressed, worried, whatever, pause. That pause is a very important part of both meditation and mindfulness. When you just pause and you don't get into whatever is arising in the mind. Now, this pause is simply a mental process that takes place right here, right now, and it will cease to be, and without any volitional action to it. That's all it is a thought. When you put volitional action to it, then it becomes doing, and it's not mindfulness, right? Now, you can be mindful while you're doing it, of course. That's where we get back into that, trying to realize that you're less of a thing, you're less of a person than you are a process, this constant energy. Now, when you try to tie the mindfulness to the mundane, let's say just the usual working of the day, your mindfulness can make the mundane seem extraordinary. And I would recommend you think about doing some daily tasks that you always do and associating it or tying it to mindfulness, such as, washing the dishes. When you wash the dishes, be mindful of the dishwashing. My wife does the cooking, I do the dishes. It's a good time for me at night to spend 10, 15 minutes just washing dishes. Ironing, that's another thing, walking the dog, or just walking when you go on a walk. When you hear a certain noise, a telephone ring, a bell ring, or whatever the noise is, pick out a noise that happens frequently. If you're in an office or something, there's something that might go on and off. Associate a 60-second mindfulness experience with that sound whenever it occurs. At Plum Village, Thich Nhat Hanh, they would ring a bell, kind of like the Angelus if you were Catholic. You ring the bell at noon, 3 o'clock or something like that, and everybody would just stop whatever they were doing and just for a minute or two just be there, be present right now. One of the other things is that if you have mala beads, every time you notice the mala beads, take 60 seconds to just be there. You don't have to think about anything. I mean, just let the mala beads remind you that right here, right now, nothing. This is it. You can see the snow, you can feel the rain. Mindfulness presents it as an opportunity every moment of our life. And meditation, for me, meditation brought me to an understanding of mindfulness on a regular basis that I really didn't have before meditation. So meditation and mindfulness serve each other. And that's all I got today.
Thank you very much.